All right, welcome everybody to the inaugural episode of the Dirtbag Champions podcast, where we are covering the last 10 years of this league. We're hitting the decade mark. I am Tom, as most of you guys should know, and here's Nick, the commissioner.
I'm Nick, the commissioner, welcoming our four-time champion, Tom. Welcome to the podcast, guys. We're finally here. We finally made something after having this league for 9 years.
Yeah, it took us a
On to the
minute.
10th right now. But yeah, before we go into a segment about this year and what's going on right now, I figured we'd do a brief recap of how we got here and how this league formed and the crazy, weird fantasy history we have in this thing. So
Yeah, let's get right into it. I think the best way to kind of begin all of this recap is let's just go through the past champions starting in 2012 and looking what the matchups were. Starting in 2012, I won that league, won that year. Me versus you. That's how we kicked it all off. So we're here now. Yeah, that's how we kicked it all off. 2012 was the beginning of what would be later become a dynasty, but we'll get to that later. 2013, we had Jake Barrett, a former member, RIP, of the Dirtbag Champions League. He won the league in 2013 with me running up, being the second place that year. Unfortunately, did not come through with the chip that year, but it is what it is. 2014, two guys you guys probably don't know about, Nick Smeeting and Ray Johnson. Half of you guys probably know one of these guys, maybe. And yeah, Nick Smeeting won the league in 2014. We'll take a look at his team later on of how well he actually performed while he was in our league. And second place was Ray Johnson. Not too much to say other than that. I think that was his best feature he's ever had in our league.
in 2015, we had a past member who's no longer in the league anymore, Luke, taking the championship against Ty. That year really was very monumental to the history of the league and something I've never seen in any fantasy league I've ever been in before. Luke won the league with scoring the least amount of points in the entire season out of any league in the season, any team in the league that season. Something that I didn't even know that could be possible, but hey, it's fantasy football, right? And then Tyler, one of the original members that we'll touch on later, that kind of started a little drought for him. I don't know if he's been in the playoffs since 2015, but this year he's having a good season, so we'll see where that ends up. But yeah, kind of put a little spin on his history. And so following it up in 2016, Adam Budge took the championship. Fairly new member. I don't know if that was his first or second year against Nick Delario. And then after 2016, that's when the dynasty started.
Yeah, that's when it all began. Again, I mean, obviously at this point, I already had one chip in 2012. I know in those mid-years, I had a couple years off where I was not doing so hot. I think I even missed the playoffs one of those years. But 2017 came through, won the chip against none other but Nick again to rebegin the dynasty. 2018 came back. This time I played Delario, beat him. 2019 came back again for the three-peat, beating Kevin FX, another former member of the league. And the dynasty wasn't quite yet over. We'll see, because in 2020 it came to an end. The three-peat was over. There was no four-peat. This was Mikey coming in with the championship, beating me in the finals. Very similar to the Giants beating the Patriots. We'll see how this really plays out in the long-term history books. I think it was just a one-off thing. I don't know. Mikey's team was unreal last year, though. I'll give it to him. The COVID year, Milan was better. He was better.
Milan was better.
Got to give it to him.
Yeah. And we'll see where this thing with Mike's going, but he's led the league in total points scored for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, and
so maybe we have a little dynasty brewing there.
Yeah, you never know. It's a Devontae dynasty. We know that that's his man. As long as he's gonna live and die by him, but it worked, man. That was me, 2012 when I had Calvin Johnson. Live and die by that man.
I mean, you had a little run there too for a while with Michael Thomas on your squads.
Yeah, dude, Michael Thomas was that man. And Julio at one point. Older Julio. But I think the next thing we should kind of take a look at is the past members. See everybody who's fallen over the years. See who's lasted.
The league graveyard.
Yeah, the graveyard of the league. Starting off with Alec, the worst performer of all time, 3-10, one season. Not much to say about Alec. That's just it is what it is, man. I don't even know if he's alive.
Yeah, we don't know. We haven't heard from him probably from that year that he was in the league. We have no idea if he's alive, if he's breathing, what's going on with him. But then after Alec, one season at 5-7-1, we have Dimitri Rivera. Some of you guys might know him, Grease Kid. Average season, one and done, 1 year. Only thing I remember about his team that year was that he had Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and refused to trade either one of them. So, and I remember both of them had unbelievable seasons. So one of them just rotted on his bench the entire year. Nobody was able to use that. And then from there, it looks like the next three people that were one-season members all made the playoffs.
Yeah, we had Marcin, friend of mine, one season participant, went 7-7, lost his first game of the playoffs. Not a bad outing for him, but nothing too bad. At least he made the playoffs. After that, you had Kulig, 10-6, 2-1 in the playoffs. Did not actually perform too bad in the playoffs, but ultimately he lost. And Ray, as we mentioned before, got to the finals, lost. He was 10-6 and was 2-1 as well in the playoffs. I think that's for the kind of those are the one season guys. Out of all those guys, obviously, I mean, I'm going to just bring it up again. Alec is the bottom of the graveyard here of the ultimate power rankings of our 10-year history. He's easily there. After that, there's a whole.
Yep.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I was just gonna mention that was the year he was living on your porch.
Yeah, I did, and then who knows what happened, dude? Maybe I don't know who killed him, but I'm not gonna. No further comment on Alec and where he is. The next group of guys are like our 2-season players. We have I think about 7 2-season players, 6 of them maybe. It's you go look up the list. The bottom of them, you got to kind of put. I guess I would put Vogel and Ricky in there. The two guys who did not make the playoffs. Vogel was 11-14-1. Ricky was 12-14. Now those guys made the playoffs. Other guys had worse records, but those are two who didn't make the playoffs after that. You can take a look and see some of the guys who did make the playoffs. Copa was in here for 2 years, 12-17, 1-2 in the playoffs. That means he made the playoffs both years he was in it. Not a bad outing out of him. Those are the early years. And then you look at Leonard, Hedger, and Kevin FX. All made the playoffs. Have all lost in the playoffs. Hedger is 0-2. Kevin and Leonard were 1-1 in the playoffs.
Yeah. So then we get to Jake Barrett, former champion, participated in 4 seasons. He went 23-32. They had more bad seasons than good ones, but he went 3-0 in the playoffs. I think that it looks like he made the playoffs only one of those 4 years and took it all the way and won.
Yeah.
He's one of the champs. Even though he's gone, he'll be in the record books forever.
Yeah, that's another guy. Who knows where he is? I don't know. Maybe Joey knows.
Yeah. Then following Barrett, we have Joe DeMore. 3 seasons. He was one of those members that cycled in and out. It wasn't consecutively, but he went 23-20-1 and 1-4 in the playoffs. So every single year he made it, he was in the playoffs. Every single year he was in the league, he made the playoffs. Didn't perform well, didn't really go anywhere, but it's not easy to make the playoffs in fantasy every year you're in a league.
No. But he got there. Yeah, and I think the next guy you can mention is my brother Pete. Not the best performances overall. He had one of the worst teams overall. And we'll take a look at that later on in the record books to see how well he actually performed. But he does have a solid record of 24, 41, and 1. 0-1 in the playoffs. Has a pretty negative. He's just lost most of the games. Every time my brother was in here, he was in here for 5 seasons, but did not contribute too much. I'll say that.
And then we're looking at Gio, one of the guys from high school that remained for a few more seasons after most of them dissipated. He went 27-27 with an 0-2 playoff record. Average player, not terrible, not a walkover. Like his record stands, 500. He was a solid member. And then after Gio, we get to the 2 guys that pretty much left a major stamp, even though their presence doesn't remain. They're not members anymore, but they both left a stamp in the league's history books. I'll let you take away and speak about those guys because they're both your friends.
Yeah, Luke was in here for 5 seasons, and Nick's meeting was here for 3 seasons. I'll first talk about Luke. I mean, Luke was, like you said, when he won the league, I think it was 2015, he had the least amount of points scored in the league, and he's the only team to ever be in that sort of a position where to have the lowest points scored ever to win a year or to win a championship. He was 28, 38, and 1 with a 2-0 record in the playoffs. So he made the playoffs once while he was here, and he won it. So pretty efficient. That gets the job done. But really, Nick's meeting is the guy to talk about. Big Buffalo Bills guy, Bills Mafia guy, loves football, obsessed with fantasy football, way more experience than I can ever get in this game. He was 29-17 in our league and was 5-2 and won the league 1 year. Nick's meeting is, being 5-2, he's easily the best former member we've had in this league. I think outperformed a lot of guys. If he continued to stay in our league, I think he'd be up there with one of the best records in the league, at least regular season. We'll take a look at that and see comparing it to the current players right now.
He was in the league 2 years longer than Pete and had 5 more wins than him.
Yeah.
Or 2 years shorter than Pete, but had 5 more wins.
Yeah. And so who knows? If he stayed in the league, he probably would have been a top performer. But now I think we take a look at the current members and see how they've performed over the years. We'll start with the guys who've been there the least, and we'll wrap it up with all the 4 OGs, people who've been here the longest and have been carrying the league. But first, I guess I'll let you take it away with the first couple guys who've been here, the newer members of the league.
Yeah, so Cam, who was just reintroduced into the league this season, spent 1 season in the league, the inaugural year in 2012, and probably put up a historic performance for the worst team that's ever been in this league.
Yeah, he's
2-11. We can get into the details later once we go through the record books, but he holds some record books that haven't been taken over in over a decade. So
yeah,
1 season for Cam, 2-11. Right now, if the current season ended today, he'd be in the playoffs. So hopefully he can end that. And then following up, the only other member who's only been in the league for a year is Brian. This is his 2nd consecutive season. Last year he finished 6-7, only game away from making the playoffs. But he started off amazing last year. Started the season 5-1, and then had a crazy downfall. But I feel confident that those 2 guys, even though they've only been in the league, there's only a 2nd season for each of them, that they'll probably end up being some long-lasting members.
Yeah, because once you start looking up the list, Jamario, with 3 seasons already under his belt, currently in his 4th season, he's 17-24, 1-1. He's not a new member, but he's rejoining the league, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's been in and out, but I think he's here to stay at this point. He's 1-1 in the playoffs, 17-24, and looking at the regular season, as I mentioned. Solid addition to the league. I think he'll be here to stay. And as we continue to go up the list, you'll see that you see the longevity of our league and how it's going to continue to grow with these veteran players, with Steve and Mike, the rivalry between your dad and your dad's ex-wife's fiance.
The Gen Bowl.
The Gen Bowl.
Steve, both of them came into the year the same year, 4 seasons. Steve holds a record of 26-31, 2-3 in the playoffs. Um, he's on a little roll right now of a playoff run. I think 2 consecutive years. So we'll see where that goes. He's turning into a very competitive member of this league. And Mike, my father, who's 26, 27-2. I don't know if any. Oh no, you do. One other person has two ties in the history of the league. But he was always always pretty consistent competitively in the regular season, making the playoffs multiple seasons, but he has an 0-3 playoff record, so hasn't been able to get over that playoff hump. And then our next member, I'll let you take that. We got Delario.
Yeah, Delario's been here for 5 seasons. Always a solid performer, even though his record doesn't really show. He's 33, 37-1. However, he's 4-2 in the playoffs and has gotten to the finals. He's especially with recent seasons, he's been one of the highest kind of like point scoring teams year in year out, but gets unlucky with some injuries and matchups throughout the year. But looking at that playoff record, I think that's more indicative of how his team has been, being 4-2 in the playoffs rather than having a losing record in the regular season, because he's obviously made it there. But then next up is I gotta go with I'm gonna go with Adam Buds here, who's 54, 35-1, and 7-5 in the playoffs. Obviously, he won the league 1 year, a winning record in the playoffs. Only 3 players who do have winning records in the playoffs. He's up there. And obviously, as a regular season regular season record, I think he has one of the highest winning percentages. So he's been a solid little addition. And then after that, in terms of longevity, Mikey's been in here 1 year longer than Adam has, and Mikey is got a 43-54 record, but 3-3 in the playoffs, 0-3 going into the year where he won it last year. And Mikey's team is really, I mean, he's been killing it as of late the last 2 years, but maybe that's indicative of where he's going, or maybe it's just lucky and he's just riding the Devontae train. I don't know.
Yeah, Mike didn't have a great history up until the last couple of years. He's led the league in points 2 consecutive seasons. And right now, if the season ended today, he'd be in. And then Adam too. Just to touch base real quick, I think he's only missed the playoffs 1 time in all 7 seasons.
Yeah, not bad.
And
Efficient.
He's 3 years shorter than the OG members. He's only less than 10 wins behind us. So that just shows you how successful he's been in this league so far. So after that, we have the 4 original members of the league that have been in the league for the 10th consecutive season.
Let's go.
10th consecutive season. Rounding out the bottom, we have Ty at 62-60 with a 2-3 playoff record. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty either 2015 or 2016 was his last playoff appearance, so he's been in a little drought. But right now he stands in the current standings at 5-2. So hopefully he changes that this year, because he needs to catch up to other 3 of us that, in terms of regular season numbers, are very, very close in wins and losses. My team, sitting at 66, 59-1, has a 2-7 playoff record. I believe I've made 5 playoff appearances in 9 seasons, 4 or 5 playoff appearances, losing in the finals twice. From 2017 to 2019, I had a 3-year consecutive playoff run, meeting Tom every single one of those years, knocking out of the playoffs in a different round each season. I'm basically, whatever you want to call it, the 90s Bills, the mid-2000s Eagles, the current Packers. That's kind of where I stand in terms of this league's history. And then we have Ronnie with a record of 68, 56-1. But has an even worse playoff record than I do, 1-7. He, in terms of like the longevity of this league, he's probably been the best regular season performer. I feel like he's been number 1 in the standings for a good portion of most seasons, finishing at the top in many years, but 1-7 playoff record, can't get over that playoff hump. Me and him combined for a 3-14 playoff record, and then that's where we take it to the dynasty.
Yeah, that's I'll take. I mean, 79, 52, and 2. More time. Me and your dad have the same amount of ties, 2 ties, but overall, what really matters is I'm 14 and 2 in the playoffs. The time comes, my team performs. Only lost twice in all my years here. We're making it almost every season. I think there was only one season I did not make the playoffs, I believe. And
I think there's a little drought in there. So you made it in 2012 because Tom's never made the playoffs and not made a championship game. So he's 4-2 in championship games. So he won in 2012, lost in the finals in 2013. And then I believe you had a three-year drought. 14, 15, 16 didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then you've been in the championship game ever since.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and we made the playoff. We'll see if my team goes into a slump this year. Well, I mean, we'll find out by the end of the year. We're still in the midseason. My team's not really necessarily doing amazing or poorly. It can go into either way. I believe right now I'm 6th or 7th coming into this week, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we'll see by the end of the year and how that works out. But yeah, 14 and 2. That's really what matters at the end of the day. I got 4 rings. I'm going for 5 and 6. I'm trying to be Brady. I'm trying to get this dynasty going. I think it is interesting to note, though, when you look at the OGs, I mean, excluding me, obviously, all you guys have losing records in the playoffs, but have made the playoffs like multiple times. And also, besides Adam Buds, all of the 4 OGs, we all have winning records throughout all of our years in this league. Even with Tyler at 62 and 60, and this isn't counting the games this season, but coming into the season, we all have winning records, and we're the only ones. Everybody else, besides Adam, don't have winning records.
Mm-hmm.
They all have losing records, so that's something where I think consistent performers, even if we're bad, we're still decent.
Even the dozens or so, around a dozen past members, there's only 2, 3. Other than people that have played one season, so anybody that played multiple seasons, there's only 3 members that have winning records of all those past guys we've mentioned too. So it's not easy to have a consistent winning record throughout the course of like a long history. But yeah, none of that really matters until you get in the playoffs, because me, you, and Ronnie are very close in that regular season clump, but your 14 and 2 playoff record puts you that many more games ahead of us in total structure.
And there's been plenty of games that our seasons, I mean, where I remember it felt like Ronnie or you or even Tyler have had the best team or the most points scored, but have just lost early on in the playoffs. And I think especially more recently with Ronnie's always been putting up a lot of points, but has not been able to come through in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference right there, and that's when it really matters. Damn, we might have to have an OG conference next year.
Throw us all in one.
Yeah.
Shake it up a little bit.
And we might give us somebody has to get a losing record, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the divisions have been pretty consistent with the members for a few years. It might not be a bad idea to mix it up for a little bit.
Yeah, well, we could see.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so that rounds up us going through every team that's ever been in this league's individual current record. So now we'll hop down and just go over a couple facts, historical facts of the league. It gives this unique competition its own little shape. So Tom is the only team in all 9 seasons to ever make the playoffs with a losing record. In 2018, he went 6-7. Hardly getting in. I think he got in as a tiebreaker with a couple other 6 and 7 teams. I think he had more points scored. But then, like I mentioned, he's never been in the playoffs, not made a championship game.
Oh, yeah.
Got in with a losing record and made the run all the way and won the championship that season.
Yeah, I think the next thing. I mean, another kind of interesting fact about our league is like the draft picks. I took a look at them, and it's interesting to point out that like nobody with the first overall pick has ever won our league, and nobody. It's the first overall pick, the fifth, the seventh, and the 10th pick. I believe those are the picks that have never won the league, and in 2015, 2019, and 2020, it was the ninth overall pick. So we have 3 years out of the 20 out of our existence. The winner has had the ninth overall pick. So keep an eye out for Mike, Nick's dad, who has had the ninth pick overall this year. Keep an eye out for him because you never know.
Two consecutive seasons, the ninth overall pick in the draft won the league.
Yeah, so you never know. There's something there. There might be something to that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's only been, out of the 12 members right now that are currently in the league, there's only 3 of you guys that have won the whole thing. Just Tom, Mike, and Adam. Only three members, so gives a lot of space for 9 of us trying to get that trophy for the first time.
That pass back. Those are the only 3 names on the pass back.
Yeah, the pass back trophy. It's a trophy that stands right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it and held on to it for 3 years since we actually got that thing.
Yeah, it turned into a trophy after I had it for so long.
Yeah. Hopefully Mikey doesn't do anything with it. We'll see though.
He better not throw that out.
You gotta trust him with it.
He's probably gonna throw that out.
Yeah, he probably will. So yeah, a little random fact in terms of who's won this league each season. 4 times the team with the most points scored in the regular season won the championship. In 2013, 2014, 16, and 20, the team that finished number 1 in points went on to win the championship. None of Tom's 4 championships, he had the most points scored. Not one. So that leaves us with one other year where it wasn't most points or Tom winning the league. And that was that 2015 season we mentioned earlier where Luke won the league with the lowest amount of points in the league that season. It's a complete anomaly. I don't know what the percentages of fantasy football leagues that have existed that happened in. I guarantee you it's under 1%.
Yeah. I mean, he did it. I don't know what the hell happened in 2015, especially in terms of football. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what happened and what kind of players he had. But yeah, that kind of sums up everything about everybody who's been in our league up to this point and what we've done up to this point. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I think we've been increasing the payout and we've been increasing the buy-in every year, and I think adding this podcast adds another level to it, and would look forward to kind of maybe giving some more value to the pass back trophy, and just like looking forward to another decade. I guess it's been a solid 10 years.
Yeah, I mean we started
9.5.
Probably like a $10-$20 buy-in back in 2012. League was hardly for nothing, kind of competitive, not really. And now we're up to $150 buy-in for each team. And my goal is to continue to have that buy-in rate go up every year, just to make the league even more competitive. But yeah, where things stand right now in our 10th season, the payout structure follows. The champion will be awarded $800. The runner-up will be awarded $400. Third place, $200. And then 4th place, so the loser of that 3rd place game is $50. But the structure's a little weird because once you really think about it, you pay $150, and if you come in the top 4, you're gonna get that back, most likely, because there's $100 prize for the conference winners. So if you're a conference winner and you get that first round bye, you already have $100 plus wherever you place. So the lowest you can place is 4th place. You'll get your money back. Anything up other than that, you'll rise and win money. Then there's also a $50 buy-in for the winner of the the consolidation bracket. That's something new.
I like that.
There's never nothing in there. So every team that missed the playoffs really had nothing to play for. Now it's not a prize. We don't have enough money for the buy-in to really award like full money back, but at least you get a percentage of your money back, and it gives people the incentive to play back for something. Because even after 4 or 5 months, that money, it feels like you're winning that money anyway. So it feels like it's just an extra $50 in your pocket if you win that losers bet. At least it makes people have the incentive
No, I
to
think
set
it's
their
a good
lineups when they know
incentive,
they're out.
and I think that's I mean, is that it for the payout structure?
And then 100 point prize for most points. Whoever has the most points at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's something that I guess we could talk about or just sort of bring up so that people are aware of the payout structure. I think that everything, all those changes are great. I think that payout structure works well, and I knew
Yeah.
just to like kind of cover shit because I know it can become an issue in fantasy leagues. Like if there's ever like we're always open to changing shit. If you guys think that one rule isn't a certain way or the payout structure doesn't work a certain way, like we can fix it. We can work it out. I think that is fair,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I think I like because I like the addition of the constellation. That's something I've wanted for a couple of years. Where, if you end up in that little shitty bracket, like you still get a couple extra weeks of fantasy football. And it also just helps with other shit with collusion of people dropping players that if they already gave up on their season, shit like that. Where it's like I think it is good to incentivize that. I'd also like you're saying we've been in here for 10 years. We've increased the price every year, rightfully so. Like I agree with it, and I think with that, like we can allow for more shit to make this league more fun. And we were talking about earlier. You guys have any more ideas you think we could add to this? Again, we're open to it, but things like the trophy. We were talking about this before of like maybe the winner of the league should get a jersey with the year
Yeah.
number, like the 21, and like Dirtbag on it. And I think it should be like the Dirtbag jersey, or maybe their team
It'd
name or
be
something.
awesome prize.
Yeah, and I think it would be like a team of their choice, but you put like Dirtbag 21, Dirtbag whatever that's the year. I think that'd be something where we're already pulling together 150 each. Where that's just something we take out of the pool and wouldn't essentially really cost anybody anything. It would just be something we take out of the pool for money and just get a custom jersey at the end of the year. So anything like that, I think that's always great, and I think it's good to openly talk about this. I think we want this league to continue to grow, and just like we're adapting. You change some of the position structures, especially with COVID. We had a deeper roster and IR spots. Like we're always open
Yeah.
to it.
I
Like
try to.
yeah,
What I always try to make this league, I try to make it pretty standard. We're getting into a time of fantasy football now in the modern day where a lot of leagues are trying to knock out the kicker, throw in IDPs, or do double quarterbacks. I don't have a problem with any of that. I just like the structure of this being a pretty standard rostered league, but also having this unique spin on it with the no waivers. That's something I've always
that's a
held
big
true
thing.
about that I really like. You don't find that anywhere. There's really not many leagues have that, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the concept of the guys there, you grab them, because I've also seen in terms of trends, everybody puts this emphasis on fab dollars and waiver priority, and it's just like Mikey won the league last year, and how many waiver pickup? How many? Mikey has hardly used his free agency, and has had the most points in the league for 2 consecutive seasons,
Yeah.
and would be a playoff team if the season ended today. So it's just like the fantasy football world puts so much emphasis on this stuff, and through this league of trial and error, you kind of see that certain things don't really matter as much as people think they do.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's
so I like
also
having that freedom to make this league a little unique.
yeah, and I like that because I think it also at the end of the day we're trying to have fun here. Like obviously we're here to win money and shit, but it is the number one thing is we are trying to just like enjoy ourselves and have fun every weekend and be competitive about it. And so we structure it in that way too because I think having the kickers there, having an extra flex spot, having the third receiver, having a deeper roster allows you to really not like allows you to I don't know allows you to really see more football and just enjoy more of like these players and watch them really play instead of having a limited roster and not being able to cut some people. You get to really expand and really take shots on certain people because there are people that like on the flip side, what you're saying with Mikey, who can make roster moves that can impact their whole season. And I think that
Yeah.
goes to your point where it's like I do like the whole the first one they grab him grabs them. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. Like we all can get notifications on the league and whatnot. Like it's not unfair. It is what it is.
Yeah, and another thing that I like that I take some time into making this league a little unique too is the whole conference structure that we do. Because standard 12-team leagues, like you're always going to play multiple people twice, especially with this added game now in the season. It adds a whole game to our season too. And forever, I've always had the two division structure, and and equally like created it so you play two teams in your division twice. So it's
Yeah,
not randomized like it is in a lot of leagues. Like you'll play a random person twice because you don't really know the fairness in that. It's all up in the air. It's fantasy football. You really don't know anything in August. So at least with that, it creates some sort of structure that there's more meaning in who you're playing and why those people are grouped together and why they're playing each other multiple times. And I already had that structure. And now the added game kind of makes that structure even better because now we have six teams in each conference, and each team plays three of those teams in their conference twice. Even more like a division, like in the standard NFL. But yeah, those are a couple things. The no waiver and the structure of our conferences are a couple things you get a little differently than you would get in most of your fantasy football leagues that you would be in.
yeah, yeah. And that's pretty much like the analysis for wrapping our league up and what we've done the past 9 years and what we're going to try to do going forward. We're going to have some other people on later on, probably discuss some of this, but we're going to take a look at the record book now. All right, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look at the record books. We'll start with the head-to-head in the all-time record books. I think it's notable to see here that the most wins ever in one season was the Toronto John Bovies season 2014. This was Nick's meeting. 13 wins in that season. That's the best record we've ever had in our year or in our league. The longest streak of all time was 8 wins in a row by Ozar Snowden and Leroy Latrump, which I believe is Chamario and Adam Buds are those two guys. So those are the kind of like the winning records in terms of losses. Most losses all time in one season. It's my brother, 13 losses. And in that same year, he got 12 losses in a row, holding the record. That's going to be a tough record to break. The only one that would have came close was Cam, but when we take a look at his team later on, we'll see that Cam pretty much had a way worse season than my brother ever did. He just happened to put together 2 wins.
Yeah, right.
It just happened to work out like that. And then I think the kind of biggest thing to mention after the head-to-head matchups that we've had and like the record books we have from after that is like the strength of the schedule. That in 2012 in the inaugural season, Tyler had the easiest strength of schedule, playing only against 81.86 points a week, which is very, very low. And just to put that in perspective, currently Tyler is also facing the weakest strength of schedule. But to put it in perspective, it's at 114 points. So that's a huge 35 point gap of how many points he's faced in a year and for that 1 year to really kind of put it in perspective.
One last thing on this page I just noticed was the hardest strength of schedule was exceeded last season by Concrete Club,
Yeah.
127 points against averaging. And right now my team is on pace to pretty much beat that by a landslide unless something changes. Because right now in this current season, my opponent's averaging 143.57 points a game against me, which is ridiculous.
It's tough, man. You can't be letting up those points on defense, man.
Nope. So then our next category we're going to briefly touch over is the team points. The most points of all time in a single week was my brother's team, who put up 213 points against Steve in 2019. It's pretty rare. Some leagues it happens easier, but in terms of our scoring system, it's rare to ever put up 200 points in our league. But a couple teams came pretty close this season. Tyler in week 5 against me on that Monday night Ravens game a few weeks ago put up 173 points, and Brian was right behind him at 171 that week. And then averaging all time for the most points in a season with around 140 points a game was Ronnie in 2018. And right now, Delario's team is on pace to beat that, averaging around 143 points a game. So then the next category we have is the least points. And this is one of the best historical stats in the whole league. The most points ever scored in any game for this league's history is Cam's team in 2012 putting up 20 points in Week 12 against Tyler that year.
Yeah.
How do you put up 20? How do you put up 20 points?
It's the least amount. It's the least points scored he's ever gotten, and not surprisingly, the same year he averaged the least amount of points scored for the entire year. Which
it
looks like he averaged
under 100 points a game, 95. If that's correct, I don't know.
No, that's how many. That's how many yards he's had. That's how many points he had for the entire season.
I don't think it is though, because remember when we were just counting his schedule, I think he had more than 100 points in the whole season. He had a couple of games where he came close to 100 points. That's why it's kind of skewed.
Yeah, well,
it looks like that's what it looks like.
Maybe it's the 50.
Literally what it. Yeah, I don't know, because that's my season total right now.
Yeah.
828. But I don't know.
There's something off in these books. But Cam, it looks like he averages either 95 or 58 points a game.
It looks like 58. It looks like the average is 58 points a game, but that obviously wouldn't total 95 points for a whole season.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, it's a little weird. If anybody can figure that out, let us know. What
I think it's
reads that
58.
So the next category, in the team category, we just briefly want to touch up is in 2012, the Dick Beaters 84, Jake Kulig's team that season, defense put up 41 fantasy points. That's insane. I need to go back and see how those stats equaled that, because I can't imagine how a defense can come up with 41 fantasy points, man. Like, had to have had at least multiple touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, I don't understand that, but that is ridiculous. I'm actually looking into it right now.
So we can move on to the third tab, the team statistic category. Starting off that tab, we have the most touchdowns. The single week was Tyler's team in 2013 with 13 touchdowns that week, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, it's like most of your guys on your roster scoring multiple times.
Yeah, that's honestly kind of crazy.
And then for least, the Cam's season average was his team scoring 2 touchdowns a game.
Yeah, that's one of the most impressive things. And I think we're going to definitely take a deeper dive into Rock's Most Wanted or Cam's original team from 2012 when he gets on, because according to this, he had 3 touchdowns.
The whole season.
And we'll take a look in more in depth and see if that's true or not, but that's embarrassing. I think that's why he ended up leaving our league for a solid 8 or 9 years before deciding to rejoin and prove himself again. Because now he's Colorado Cam. He's a new man. He can come through with a different energy. He's ready. He's here.
Yeah, making music again, working for billionaires, and back in the league.
Colorado Cam is in full effect.
You want to talk about passing yards?
Yeah, I mean, single week all-time passing yards record is the COVID Cowboys, which was Ronnie against me in week 4 of last year with 539 yards, which I didn't look into it, but I believe that must have been Mahomes against me. But I think it's more a bigger thing to point out is the season average all time, not the single week one. Is the Blacklit Bastards 2013? This is when Tyler had Peyton Manning on his Broncos year. He averaged 338 yards a game, and that was a very good year for Tyler as well in terms of fantasy. And then when you look on the flip side of all that, the season average all time worst passing yards, like the lowest in the passing yards ranking is Cam again with the Rock's most wanted at season 2012, averaging it looks like 159 yards a game.
The team was legendary.
Yeah, and we were looking at his team a little bit. It looked like he had Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Flynn starting for most of the year. Interesting lineup choices by Cam that year. Passing yards are always big in fantasy, but rushing yards are always huge with your running backs and what you can get out of like the top 10 running backs. And when you look at it, I mean, somehow Leonard got in there with the most rushing yards a game, averaging a game. But for a single game, it was Mikey back in 2012, had 421 yards. And we both were suspecting that this was the AP game. We know Mikey's a big fan of the former Redskins, definitely the Redskins at the time. Mikey was a huge fan of them, and AP was like his biggest fan, or AP was his biggest man crush in the NFL, I think, at that time. It was one of the only players he knew. And it paid off for him. It paid off for him, clearly. And I think on the flip side of that, when you look at that, the least amount of rushing yards, somebody had minus 17 in 2012, the Chris Kellys. I don't know who that was.
Jake Vogel.
That was Jake Vogel at minus 17 rushing yards out of his entire team in 1 week. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the least amount for the entire season was Pussy Grabbers in 2017 with 55 yards. That's just not going to get it done.
No, and then next we have the receiving amount. Tyler, again, man, holding current season and all-time records in some categories. Then 2020, last season, he put up setting the record with 642 receiving yards. And this year coming close to it in week 5, putting up 575 yards against me. And then Ronnie holds that category in 2015. So least receiving, look at who we got once again. Rock's most wanted. 1 week they had -4 receiving yards in their entire team. Again. Making a case. Sometimes when you're the worst, you can really solidify yourself to be remembered, though, because this team will never be forgotten.
No, it'll always be
Rock's
there.
most wanted. It will always be remembered. Like Pete's season was bad, but it'll never be remembered. He holds no records. Just a streak. That's it. Everything else, like
Rocks.
and then on that totaling that season, he had again the total season for that team. I don't know. We got to go back and look, but it says 129 yards for the whole season.
I think that's how much he averaged per game, but that's still pathetic.
And it's and total. That's where it's weird. It's like 129 for both.
Yeah.
Because you see the current right now, right? It says 211 for Jamario, but 1,400 for the season. So that's why it's a little weird. And then the last stat we'll cover. Some people have claimed that kickers don't matter in fantasy, but that's why they're getting rid of them in their league formats. But I mean, 2017 for Adam, it mattered when his kicker had 7 field goals.
Yeah, in one game.
In one game.
Yeah, in one game he got 7 field goals, and then over for the entire season he averaged the most amount of field goals, 2.62, which really, in terms of fantasy points we're looking at, I think it's about 11.5 points he was averaging a game from his kicker that year. And that season that was huge for him because I think that was the year post. That wasn't the year that he won it, but that was the year that he made the playoffs. And
I just pulled it up. Can you take a wild guess who his kicker was that year?
It was Jankowski.
No,
Tucker.
Tucker.
Oh man.
Yep.
Betraying his own team.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But yeah, I mean that rounds it up for the record book. Like we said, that can all be found right in the Yahoo site. There's a tab with it right on the main site. I don't think it's on the mobile, but if you log in onto a desktop, it's right there. Also, all of the league history that we mentioned, you can go back and look at every season. If you log in on the browser, there's a little drop bar where you can scroll down and check out the stats and the records and the history of every season for the previous 9 and the current season. So I think that wraps up our segment on the league history. We'll be back in a little bit with some guests talking about the mid-season review for the 2021 season.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Yep.